Valorant and CSGO are both doing really good. They're one sort of shooter. And when you look at all of the contemporaries, all of the big shooters, the big franchises we talk about, they're kind of really messed up right now. It's shocking, actually. So when we look at Battlefield 2042, we see Chaos and Doom. When we look at Halo Infinite, we see Chaos and Doom. When we look at Call of Duty Vanguard, we actually do see some Chaos and Doom as well. And when you look at Splitgate, the game that roared onto the scene, producing humongous numbers, securing $100 million in funding, their players are also significantly down as well. So what is actually sustainable in the shooter market? Do modern gamers actually want shooters as much as older game developers actually want to make shooters in the traditional arena shooting format that at least we all grew up in, but maybe modern gamers are not really growing up in that as much? I'm not sure, and today we're going to try to figure that out. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, there's almost a very unfortunate truth here, and that is times change and gaming tastes have very much changed along with them. Not all to say there's doom and gloom, because there's a world for arena shooters. There's a world for like the kind of games that we grew up with, as opposed to newfangled battle royales and stuff, but there's almost certainly it's a very narrow rope to walk to make something that I guess old people will like, but also has the monetization capability and the actual draw to keep players in, because boy, the industry is very different.
Yeah, it's utterly brutal. So if we were to do just a quick run through everyone, right? Obviously, Halo Infinite. We've talked about that recently in the channel. And, Halo's a massive franchise. I really care about Halo. I always have. Every time we do a video on Halo, people don't click on it. And that just shows that damage has been done to the Halo brand. At least whenever a game like Anthem would come out and would really have its awful news going on, people would hate clicking that shit. You see with Halo, it's just turned into apathy. And that does make me sad. At least when people are kind of doing the hate clicks and there's still big interest, it's possible to turn it around. But whenever there is apathy, then even your positive messages will struggle to resonate. There's no massive opinion to perform PR jiu-jitsu on to flip in your favor. So that's brutal for Halo Infinite. That makes me sad. To go to another beloved childhood franchise, we've got the Battlefield series. This is a bad day for me, everyone.
Yep.
I mean, 2042, what do I even need to say? It's been having pretty shortish session times. Meaningful progression, not really a thing. The whole thing's screwed. They've done all the specialist stuff that didn't go down well with players. The map design didn't go down well with players. And it has now been clowned on because other Battlefield games get more players than it does on Steam. So that's all brutal for 2042. And per Henderson's reporting, they've basically already decided to cut and run, and they've sort of just internally declared that 2042 is a wash. That is true, but also they kind of did similar in the sort of middle bit of Battlefield 5's life, and that's pretty sad when you think about the sheer quantity of content that Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1 got. And of course, you then can't help but realize that the second they turned them into live services instead of map packs that people could buy, it all went to shit. I wonder. And then Call of Duty.
Yep.
Call of Duty, where, you got Modern Warfare. Pretty awesome.
Everyone
I know.
loves it. Yep.
Pros, very angry about aspects of that game. But I fucking loved it. I thought it was really cool. I really enjoyed how it reinvigorated the franchise. The next game, Black Ops Cold War, I think certainly a step back. Literally a step back in terms of engine. Its multiplayer felt good enough, but it was treading water. Now, if the usual sort of tick-tock thing was going to happen, then Vanguard would bring it back. And indeed, Vanguard did bring us back to the really cool game engine and all of that. But the game has basically just had issues. And it's another short session time shooter that is struggling. And it does have the usual Call of Duty strengths, like its progression system that keeps people playing. And while the game has sold millions, Activision themselves are disappointed in it. And that's at the same time that Warzone has also been facing problems. Now the big question is, can King Kong and Godzilla save it? As per their most recent update. And then Splitgate.
Yeah, Splitgate's a really sad one because obviously everyone loved it and like nothing's really changed about it. It's just it had like 36,000 concurrent players back in August 2021. When everyone found out about it, went, this is like a really good Halo, but with portal mechanics. This is amazing. Holy shit! And like to this day, there's basically not a negative review about the actual gameplay itself.
Yep, I love it.
It was incredible. Earned 100 million in funding off the bat of that success. 'Cause everyone's like, holy shit, this is going to be the big new thing. And then it just sort of quietly faded into irrelevance. And that's just brutal.
So it lost, per Steam, 90% of its players in 2 months, which is, you could say is a bit brutal, but actually, if you're comparing a launch peak, or, because it wasn't actually technically the launch of this game, but its peak whenever people know about it, to any point in time after that. I mean, you could do that if you had access to the active player count of Final Fantasy 14 Endwalker, you would see a similar-ish thing. It's just like this with so many games. But it did definitely move pretty low. It's got an average of 1,400 players. Now, the good thing there is that's enough to keep most game modes and things like that populated with people. So you still can play it and stuff. Yeah. But when you think about it, it is a brilliant arena shooter in the style of Halo with a unique twist, which I really enjoy. It's such a cool game. And that means it's got a nice high skill ceiling, so you can really feel accomplished if you play it for a long time. But you do then have the usual live game progression where you're getting your loot boxes for cosmetics and stuff like that. And yeah, you don't really care about them that much. And it is kind of struggling a little bit with player population. Apparently, actually, reports of bots sometimes being used to backfill, which you really don't want to hear that. It's probably the sort of thing, if you're a normal average player in terms of skill rating, I imagine you'll be okay. But if you're kind of like far out of the pack, you're probably going to have issues filling matchmaking.
Which is going to be a problem when you've got a game like that with such a high skill ceiling. You've got a massive variance in player skills, so a lot of players are reporting just bots in matches, and it's not like super advertised. It's just kind of, oh, I didn't notice. Oh, those are bots. And it just kind of takes that feeling away of you're playing like a real healthy game. The progression, people aren't finding it meaningful at all. I was looking at trying to see why people weren't playing this game quite as much, and at least a decent few people are like, I just I log in, I get a little bit of progression, and I don't care, and I just log back out. And that's the thing of they're playing for the progression as opposed to the fun because the progression's there. And then when it's not there, they don't want to have the fun anymore. And they're like, okay, fine.
And we gamers have been taught. Yeah. We've been taught, we have been cognitively conditioned to play games in a certain way, a way that is entirely different to when you and me were, say, in secondary school, just in lobbies of Halo, or at least for me, lobbies of Call of Duty, that sort of thing with our friends at school. Not really playing. I mean, you'd have that one guy in school who prestiges a bunch, but not in the way that these modern games are designed whatsoever. We were just playing because it was fun.
Yep, absolutely.
And there was a point in time with Call of Duty where they got their challenges and all of that to be quite satisfying. So there would be gameplay in completing through all of those, but it hadn't quite flipped over to modern live service mode. And there just seems to be something about these modern live service games that, well, they just don't really seem to succeed that much. It seems to be the business model that everyone is chasing, but I'm struggling to see successes. Now, another example then is Overwatch 2. It's very hard to find the player data, but obviously with all of its Twitch drops being concentrated in, was it a 12-hour period?
Yeah.
It had a humongous peak, and then it fell right down to double where it had been.
Oh yeah, it was 8 hours rather. So is this like 8 hour spike of 1.5 million peak, and then it dropped down to like 20,000 average? And you're like, it's Twitch viewership. That's probably okay. People are probably playing the beta, but it certainly seems like based on headlines and player sentiment, it's definitely not a overwhelming win.
Definitely not.
Like, oh, there's a lot of question marks around this. Is it Overwatch 2? Is it Overwatch 1.1? What's happened here?
It's a free update to Overwatch 1 multiplayer. Overwatch 2 is the PvE game, and Blizzard should have made that really fucking clear. Because casual players are confused. Everything I've seen of that game basically suggests happy pros. I think for a lot of the YouTubers, I mean, if I was in that position, I'd just be happy to have something to talk about finally. But for the way that they would be playing the game, I think, and what the pros think, it seems like a lot of super welcome changes. But for your average player, certainly I will say, the amount of bloom. 100%
hard to see. Like
Overwatch 2 looks worse than Overwatch 1 in my opinion. It's less clean. Character designs, they've just done the sequelitis thing of put more shit in the characters, so the characters kind of look worse. Their relights of the maps, I think generally that those maps were kind of designed for that mood and ambience, and then when you change the time of day, they just don't work that well.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm not sure about Overwatch 2.
I think everyone's response to the like day and night being switched is literally just, "Oh, you're trying to make us think they're new maps, you cheeky bastards." And that's ultimately what it feels like.
For me, it's an art direction perspective.
Yeah.
I think some of those maps are actually, no, they're universally all better in their original art direction, I would say.
Is it El Dorado at night is way better?
Absolutely.
Everyone knows that.
Yeah. Then Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 I bring up almost to make a point about Lawbreakers.
Yeah.
I'm one of the 3 people who played that game. I really enjoyed Lawbreakers, actually. I thought it was a really, really cool concept, but like Titanfall 2, it was hard. I was bad at it, but it was hard. And in Titanfall 2, go watch high-level Titanfall 2 gameplay.
It's inhuman.
There is, no wonder people can't get into Titanfall 2.
Yeah.
And that's tricky, because the design of the game is beautiful. The gameplay is beautiful. The movement, beautiful. Gunplay, beautiful. But that has not resulted in a game that is super playable for a long period of time for a broad user base.
That's exactly the problem, because you could argue, oh well, EA killed it by shipping it at this time, but then you look at its resurgent with North Star and private servers. They even added like a really like, especially for being kind of amateur work, a really well edited trailer that put together like, oh hey, we've brought attrition back, we finally got it to work, even though we don't have the server data for it, we managed to make it work, here it is. And then you see there's like 1,000 people playing it, which to be fair is close to Splitkit, which isn't bad for a very old game that's like that kind of skill setting. But it seems like audiences for those games seem to be capping out around that point now. And that's just because, well, I mean, compared to everything else we've talked about, it's kind of the same thing. You see the same thing. You see either there's no sense of progression, or it's not really there, or it's like not really good. Kind of like the Halo progression being a bit bad, or it's like a really short session time game where you're a match is a couple minutes tops, and then you just repeat a couple of minutes matches over and over again. That's one of the like standards here. Then you've also just got the fact that there's a little bit of a skill ceiling, a little bit of a skill gap. It's very much you're either good at this game or you're not. I
have a feeling some of this is we want to say that we want to play these games. Maybe we don't massively. It's a bit tricky. I mean, I'd be super excited by the idea of COD 4 Pro Mod, but a new game. Hey, Bulkhead, Italian 1944 people. Have worked on something to that effect, but I think it was more just something they did to like just do a cool thing and improve some of their internal like tech and stuff. But the likes of COD 2, COD 4 Pro Mod, like, do modern audiences really want to do that? It's in the same way that people have been trying to bring back the like UT style arena shooter for so long, and it never worked. And so many really cool innovations on that format of game have happened. And I think what we found is that the super high skill ceiling PvE boomer shooter has worked really well, but that is just not translated into the PvP format. And it starts to make you think, is this a aspirational idea of a game that we all like the idea of, we all think it's cool, we all think they should exist, but when push comes to shove, maybe we don't play them because other games are fundamentally bringing different things to bear in the market. And that's where we do have to talk about a few other games. Fortnite, the content cadence is super fast. It's a culture that's passed me by, but it undoubtedly is a massive culture. It's unfortunate for them that I think of that, and I think of late night funny men flossing. I'll never get that out of my brain. Thanks, bozos. But look, Fortnite, by all accounts, it is actually a great game.
Yep, for sure.
It is a great game, and funny enough, I saw an advertisement of a Fortnite with no building, and I thought, oh shit, maybe that's the time I'll try it just to see what the hell a Fortnite is. But if I think about that, I mean, I immediately think about battle royales. Again, maybe I'm just a big old boomer. I prefer PUBG to Apex. I prefer PUBG probably to Fortnite. I like the very obvious Arma DNA that's came in there. But when I think about that genre, a lack of mechanical shooting skill can be overcome by incredible awareness, incredible strategy. There's so many different ways to play. Maybe to get that chicken dinner, you do have to be an incredible crack shot, but for a general gameplay experience, there's so many things going on, so many ways for a player to just like individually be good in a way that Overwatch 1 actually captured, and in a way where Titanfall 2 kind of doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, even if you think about it in like a kind of almost like, I guess, traditional design perspective, like what kind of experience people can have in a battle royale, if you have a bad experience, you leave and go again. In a sort of like in a Call of Duty style multiplayer, you're trapped. I mean, the match isn't very long, but you're trapped in a match where you're playing like shit.
Yeah.
So like the longer session time is kind of you having more fun and enjoying yourself more, which I think just lends better to how people seem to play games these days. And that's why, I mean, obviously the battle royales aren't everything, but you have to look at their prominence and go, there's clearly a reason people are playing.
Yeah. Looting.
Yep.
Randomness. Builds to work towards. There's so many other parts of that loop that work on your psychology that create a rich fantasy.
Yeah.
Again, to go to Apex Legends, I mean, 24-hour all-time or 24-hour peak, basically 320k.
Yep.
It's wild. The all-time peak is 392k. Well, 393 really. The 24-hour peak, whenever we took the screenshot, 318.
That was earlier today.
That's just a healthy fucking game, everyone.
Yep. And I think they have a patch coming up. I think it's like maybe by the time this video is out, the patch is live, I think.
Oh, sweet.
So yeah, they have something coming up, and that coincides with possibly a mobile launch as well. But yeah.
To think everyone thought it would be a flash, or not everyone. To think many thought it would be a flash in the pan shortly after that surprise drop.
Fairly sure I was one of them. God,
yeah. So again, it has all of the strengths of a battle royale game.
Yep.
It can bring in, like, I think a little bit more arena shootery feel with its combat. And I guess way more gameplay possibilities than, well, different gameplay possibilities than, say, a PUBG. So very successful. Then we look at Rainbow Six Siege. What do we got there? Well, we've got a high skill ceiling, climbing ranked. It feels like an esports game to people.
Yeah, it is.
And that means that while, yeah, there are the various cosmetics and things like that to progress with, there is another form of progression in the same way that people will play CSGO. Or maybe the same way people will play Valorant. And I think this is where we're actually starting to think about things. Because even in an Apex, all the PUBGs, those Battlegrounds games, there's a very clear North Star, regardless of the cosmetic loop. Yep. We actually think about these super successful games. The ones, though, that just end up being, hey, here's a arena shooter loop, buy some shit in the store, motherfucker. That doesn't seem to work as well these days.
Yep.
You should think about
that. I mean, like, obviously there is ranked and Halo and stuff, but that's not, I think, historically how people played those games. Whereas, I mean, people play them to be good, to be a little bit of that, but I think, like, the, especially when it comes to, like, I guess, you're talking about the breadth of what you can do in a Battle Royale is probably a good way to look at it, because Rainbow Six Siege is not about, you know, the kind of arcadey style of, oh, have a rough awareness of map and click heads faster. There's a substantial amount more depth in terms of strategy, so people can improve in a lot of different kind of ways and different angles, which I think makes the ranked meta a little bit more appealing than in something like a more basic arena shooter, which has like a, I guess, a substantially more narrow amount of like skills you can have, but a lot more like height in terms of how high you can go there. I think that's the ticket.
Yeah, and then for another super successful game that again is a shooter, but it's not a traditional arena shooter, that is Tarkov. In 2020, they were reporting 200,000 concurrent players. Now, they had a server wipe that led to a new patch in December 2021. That all brought in a new wave of players. And at that point, there was queues of 50k, all the way up to 100k. And then a very interesting thing where people realized you could only buy one Christmas tree. And that meant that over January, they had at least 658k unique players because of the Christmas tree participation.
Yep, and some anecdotes were saying, well, you know, just a Reddit thread, like, well, out of me and like 4 other people who played the game, only 2 of us actually built the tree. And other people saying, well, I didn't bother. So it's like, that's you know, probably around 70 to 80% of the unique players. So they probably had close to 1 million unique players over that period of January. But because it's not on Steam, because it's on its own launcher, it's that kind of almost like the audience that plays stuff like, I'm trying to think, like World of Warships, World of Tanks, that kind of vaguely mono game-esque player that gets lost to the industry who's talking about Halo. Over in Tarkov, they're just like, yeah, everyone loves this game, and it's like an MMO, persistent world kind of MMO light mechanics with all the looting and the escaping and stuff, a modified version of a BR in essence, but it's got the long session times, it's got regular updates, it's got like emergent story that happens while you're playing. Something like a Halo or Call of Duty doesn't have that.
Yeah, and I think it's like if you're playing Call of Duty, maybe doing ranked search and destroy, maybe that would end up being the stickiest mode for the people who would play it. Perhaps because it taps into some things that Valorant and CSGO tap into, which is the longer session times because of how ranked works. And of course, Valorant and CSGO are very similar games, massively high skill ceiling, and the way to play the game is to climb ranked, which again gives you that North Star.
Yeah, it's that like almost like a lifestyle game where there's the PvE kind of lifestyle game of a Destiny 2, where you're constantly improving your character. But then there's the CSGO and Valorant, which also taps into like the Dota and the League of Legends things as well, which is you're constantly improving yourself as a player. And that's your kind of lifestyle is, oh, I'm going to spend a couple months and grind rank in this game. And that's the thing that makes it really, really sticky, is because you have that personal story around it. Whereas that's not necessarily the case in the other games that you're playing purely for fun. Because fun is great, but I think the industry's finding out that fun isn't everything.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yep.
Then when you look at Destiny 2, it manages to kind of blend it both. It is super fun. It's also MMO light. Yeah. Therefore, there's just, as you said, there's always that stuff to go to. Now, Team Fortress 2 is an interesting one. Yeah. It's just stayed at like around 60 to 70k players in Steam for basically ever. Yeah. And I suppose it does have its own economy and all that stuff going on. It just seems like it has its audience and they know what they want to do.
Yep, which is 2 Fort.
So when we actually think about all of this, not that we're just going to sit down and do a pitch for a new shooter, but if we try to analyze what actually works in the market, and I don't know, maybe we can run this through some of Ubisoft's failed ideas.
Maybe.
So what does seem to work? Well, the first thing we're realizing is longer session times over shorter session times.
Yep. So instead of a in 3 minute do a round out, you're sitting down for half an hour, you're sitting down for maybe 2 half-an-hour periods, stuff like that, or I guess like a CSGO of I'll do as many ranked games as I feel like kind of thing just seems to work better.
Yeah. Then emergent story possibility. So PUBG's always one of the best. There are rounds of PUBG that I played there's like 1 or 2 rounds that I played 5 years ago that I remember.
Yeah.
Right? Like I remember the first time that me and the guys got number 1. That's the power of the story that can happen in a battle royale. Indeed. The other thing is content consistency. Actually, the content coming out. Halo, perhaps, if it was able to juice this side, and if it had that community content via Forge mode, maybe it would do better.
Yeah.
But what we see from almost all the big winners is either there is emergent storytelling in an extremely replayable mode, which means the developers don't really need to add a massive amount of content because basically it's the shooter version of Summoner's Rift.
Yeah.
Or it has to be a game that is consistently giving you content, or in the likes of, say, an Apex Legends. I mean, it has all of those things.
Yep, exactly.
Which is one of the incredible, I think, feats of that game.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if I would consistently say, like, a consistently updating content will make a game that's bad in the other ways good. But what it will do is it will keep players there. If they're enjoying the game, content updates will keep them there forever. Whereas if they're not enjoying the game, content updates will like maybe try to bring them back. So I feel like this is like a mitigating factor of player loss. And that's why like the games that definitely aren't succeeding are the worst for this, for sure. I mean, the whole Overwatch as a live service really wasn't. It was a service. It was a sleeping service more than anything else for its entire life, to be honest. It was brutal.
That's a good way of putting it. Ranked. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is something we know from even the MOBA genre, even from StarCraft 2. I know it's not a humongous game. I know at a point a few years ago, a source actually told me that Star 2 was like still outperforming HOTS.
Of course, yeah.
And it's just the thing. People
game.
Who play Star 2 play Star 2. They like to climb ranked. It just keeps on trucking, right? It's super healthy.
Yeah.
Pity they, kind of stopped active development of that game. Sad. But yeah, having a good ranked climb meta, whenever I felt more invested in Halo Infinite was when I was doing the ranked stuff. I will say that some of the map and mode variety issues did sort of hit me a little bit. There was things I would have liked to do, like ranked team doubles, Ranked team doubles was my favorite thing to do in Halo 3, and that wasn't present.
Yep.
Right? So that just kind of sucked for me.
I mean, you could even look at the backlash to Halo's recent update, where obviously they said Joe Staten said they'll look at it, they'll see the feedback and address it. But the fact that they removed a couple of the skill jumps and stuff, the players were like, oh, we found these, and these are part of our identity as good ranked players. We know how to abuse this terrain to make this interesting jump and get the advantage. That's a part of what those players were enjoying about the game. That oh, my investment in the game, I am better at it. And that kind of feels like the removal of those feels like they're pulling the rug out from underneath them, which kind of directly undermines the point of a solid climbing meta.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, of course, a good feeling of progression. And that's something where you look at Splitgate, it doesn't have that. You look at Halo Infinite, it does not have that. It's better with Season 2 of Halo Infinite, in fairness, but it still is not great. They need the career progression. They just need all that stuff. They need so much that they don't have right now.
Yeah, I think you either need a sense of personal progression, like in the ranked thing, or a sense of world progression.
Yeah.
That's where Destiny 2 comes in very much, where people are happy to put the time into the characters because they have the mods, they have the exotics, they have the guns, they have the power level, they have all that stuff that's theirs.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us into the MMO light stuff,
Yeah.
which I suppose in a way Tarkov actually does have some of that, and
bit,
of course Destiny's are very obvious example of being MMO light. And then for what doesn't work, and this is the bit that's unfortunate because it is lots of the games that I played when I was younger at shorter session times, so your traditional arena shooter does seem to struggle in the market today.
Seems to, yep.
Bad progression, which is fairly obvious, but it's a strange thing where it felt like we didn't need the progression back in the day.
Yeah.
We could just play 2 Fort for a long time. We could just go into a Dust 2 server for a long time. How many countless hours did I spend on Knife, on surfing maps, just because of the inherent fun, and it was a fun little thing to do.
Yep, I remember playing...
It's not like that now.
Yeah, I remember playing Time Splitters 3 Future Perfect at a friend's house because he's the one who had the PS2 Ethernet connector, and we would just play against people online till 5 or 6 in the morning. And the idea of progression in a video game wasn't in my brain at any point when I was doing that. But now I know it would be. Because I know when I try to play these games, there is that tickle in my brain going, oh, but where's the progress? Go log into WoW instead, log into FF14 instead, log into something that's meaningful use of your time instead of having fun. And if I'm aware of this and actively trying to psychologically combat it and it's still working, man... It's rough times.
Yeah, I think most people who aren't actively aware, because we are boiled frogs.
Yeah.
But a lot of people came, the way you can buy a pre-cooked chicken breast in MS? That's what I think most of the modern gaming population kind of are. They didn't get they're not the boiled frog because that is what video games were when they started playing them.
They don't know what cold water is.
Yeah, so we think about just playing COD 2, just playing 80 hours on one map with a small set of rifles because it was fun and there was a high skill cap. And that is just not how games are played. It's not how our brains have been conditioned. Of course, I think maybe for both of us, we went from playing shooters into playing MMOs and shooters.
Yeah.
And evidently the brain gets trained to expect a certain form of progression from games. We look at the gamification of everything else that is out there, accruing likes, accruing followers, stuff on Instagram, all the TikTok stuff. And there's something that is shifting and changing.
For sure.
I have a feeling that in this new wave of just games being made and developers, that there's a lot of older devs who are thinking about the games that they loved, wanting to recapture some of that with modern technology and a new level of polish. But some of the things we've talked about today maybe are catching people off guard. And that's actually causing games to struggle. And I think that means... This feels weird. But that Halo Battle Royale.
Yeah.
Because I say that, Halo is really well positioned for Battle Royale.
Definitely.
Movement in Halo, in that big open world in the campaign, is really fun. I think the way that it works with its weapons and all of that could also be quite fun. And maybe it's the sort of thing where if that has a rank, and it has some of those other sort of things that we've talked about, then maybe that can do okay. And that feels very uncomfortable for me to say, because in my head, Halo is what Halo is.
Yeah.
But perhaps we're in a strange situation where things kind of have to grow and change. And then I think about Battlefield, and it's a strange thing. The thing that's continually pissed me off about Battlefield is they just haven't focused on the core of Battlefield. And it seems like all of what they've been trying to do is hammer Battlefield into the successful games that we're talking about today. Battlefield does have those longer session times, but they tried with Firestorm, but Firestorm just wasn't well positioned in the market to be successful. And then reportedly, the new Battlefield game, 2042, initially started as some sort of really large battle royale-like project, per, again, Tom Henderson's reporting. And then it kind of gets beaten back into being more of a traditional Battlefield game, but then it just ends up doing none of those things right. So it's a bizarre existential time for people who have enjoyed FPSs for a long, long time. It's heartening that there are games like maybe, I don't know, perhaps Insurgency, certainly Squad, that have their niche, that are just nice and happy with their niche. Maybe that is the sort of place that us, I don't know, old 27 and 28-year-olds go.
Yeah. I mean,
feels weird to say, but the market's changing, undoubtedly.
I think that's a thing that people will kind of have to, hopefully the market adapts to it as well, but like niches are getting more cordoned off, I think. And I think like the idea of Halo chasing this massive success, Halo was successful in a completely different era of how people played games. And I think that's something that they kind of have to recognize whenever they make a new one. They either have to make one for the niche audience, or they have to make something and make sure they know that it's going to work better for a different audience. And it's weird sitting here being able to talk about this and think, well, this is like fairly obvious analysis. Obviously, game developers and especially big publishers are doing the same. They probably have almost the exact same bullet point list ahead of us.
Yeah.
But there's pushback from developers going, no, we want to make the games we liked. And that's fair, but it's that thing where it turns out that I think the reality of it is just a little bit unfair.
The crazy thing is Halo 5 really tried here. It had a new bigger than big team battle mode that had the requisition monetization thingy going on with it. But it was actually quite fun. It had a mode that looked like, Speedball and Paintball. It had a mode that looked like Speedball. Like nice. Those CSGO maps that are clearly just made in a map editor because, hey, here are the sight lines we want. This is purely a competitive map. It tried really hard on all of those things for the more casual players, for the other sorts of players, for the people who want the more PvE horde experience. I think Halo 5 maybe had some other issues, but it's a strange thing of they've continually tried. And it's weird that Halo Infinite basically does try to go back to basics for Halo, but it doesn't retain the innovations of Halo 5, nor the content quantity.
Yeah, I think
it messes up the progression.
Yeah, to me, I think that's like it's unfortunate going through this. That's like the experiment we need to see. We need to see what happens if a game like Halo releases, but it has really good, juicy progression that people really enjoy. What happens if like the ranked meta is built around it really quickly? What happens if it's constantly updated every 3 months or every couple months, whatever kind of thing happens for Apex for getting regular updates all the time? Like, is there a world where we could see something like that just to, hopefully prove us wrong and prove what, the kind of analysis I've thrown together this morning to prove that stuff wrong? Because I don't like seeing any of this. Yeah. This makes me really, really upset. And I'm sure there's like, it obviously doesn't matter because it doesn't matter what's popular. It's matter what exists. But then what's popular drives what will exist in the end. And it's like, I'm sure like Splitgate's a great game, but I think people who want arena shooters want something that's, maybe a little bit more prestigious to play. Because that's so much a part of it as well. Everyone played Halo because everyone played Halo. Yeah. And that's not happening anymore. And then, even Fortnite is an example compared to, people wanted Unreal Tournament and Epic were like, do you see how much money we're making with Fortnite? We're never touching Unreal Tournament. Go away.
Also, do you see how many people play arena shooters when they get released?
Yeah.
The Quick Champions just didn't have the numbers.
Yep.
Like, we can kind of talk here in this way of, I'm going to say things that signal to you that I have the right opinions and I like the right games. And you're going to agree with me because that signals that you too have the right opinions, like the good games, and are a true connoisseur. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, this shit comes out to the market and people don't stick.
I think you said earlier aspirational kind of games. And I think the best analogy is the kind of, how do I put this? I'm trying to think of the perfect one. So buying something like Lawbreakers, or buying something, or even installing Splitkit or something like that, going and installing Titanfall 2 and playing some North Star, that's the equivalent of like getting a gym membership. And it's like, I can see a world where I make perfect use of this and I feel great and I'm so good at this game and everything's incredible. But in reality, you don't always make use of it fully. And instead, the thing that's actually more naturally satisfying, not like the higher calling in your spirit satisfying, but I'm just going to see a movie. I'm just going to play Apex. I think ultimately that's a little bit of how it's gone. Obviously, that positions one is right and the other is wrong. Yeah. But I think in terms of skill ceiling and skill cap, I think that's how people think about it and feel about it. And that's really unfortunate. But I think that's basically what's wrong with shooters.
It's rough.
Yep.
There's not much of a conclusion here other than times are clearly changing. What people actually prefer to play is clearly changing, and the way that people have been trained to play games is having extremely clear, both intended and side effects that I think we're only starting to appreciate now. I think in the same way that there are lots of other consequences of how the last 5 to 10 years of development in the online realm, we're beginning to notice those consequences too.
Yeah. Honestly, the second and third order effects of video game development is going to kill humanity for sure.
A little bit of that, yeah. All right, so look, what do you think? How things change for you? Do you like the good shooters, want good shooters, but somehow don't have the motivation to keep playing them day in, day out like you used to in the past? Because I have that problem too. So do let me know what your experience has been, and we'll see you next time.